Hace pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for Friday, November 17th, 2017. A lot happened since we last did a show yesterday. We'll talk about this later. Caleb Porter out as Portland's head coach. He initiated the move, apparently. We'll talk about this in our second segment today. But to start the show, another news that happened this week, FC Kansas City moving to Salt Lake and becoming affiliated with Real Salt Lake. To talk about the state of the NWSL and the move of Kansas City to Salt Lake, Beau Dure. Beau, how you doing today?
Good morning, everyone, and I'm sorry there's still no Canadian team in NWSL.
Yeah, no doubt in that. We are too, and come on, CSA and NWSL, get this done. I think it would be a benefit to everyone and would add a little more spice to the league. But moving past that, the move, FCKC wasn't exactly the most stable of ships in the last couple of years. So was this a move, Beau, that was needed, do you think?
Well, you hate to say needed because it's always sad when a team moves. But I think in this case there was there's more sadness than anger. I think if you compare it to, say, the situation in Columbus right now, everyone is angry about that because that just seems like something that really does not need to happen. Kansas City, people are sad. Maybe a few people are angry about it, but they've gone through two ownership groups. It hasn't worked. Attendance has been really low. It's a shame because that the Sporting Kansas City ownership group has shown that soccer can work very well in Kansas City. They had a really good team on the field. They were starting to come together at the end of last season. It wasn't their best season overall, but toward the end of last season, they were reminding everyone that, hey, this is a group of people who can play. But then, of course, they've lost their coach, and now they're it simply wasn't working. And I think people, as sad as they are, understand that. So I think it's probably it's not quite the Chivas USA, yeah, fine, you guys are totally gone, we don't really care, but it's also not Columbus.
Fair enough. You mentioned they went through two ownerships. The group that didn't come in there was SKC. There was some rumors around that. Speculate a little bit there. What was it about the situation that you think didn't allow what is a very successful ownership group in SKC to jump in and take hold of those reins and try and affiliate with their very successful men's team?
It's hard to say. Perhaps they're just worried about taking on too much. And, we've seen that the MLS NWSL model isn't a magic bullet for attendance or anything like that. Yes, Portland is wildly successful. Orlando is quite successful. Houston, a little less so. And it's hard to say that they could have pulled it off if they had the same resources that, Portland or Orlando would have. They might not. And you don't want to see it done badly because then if it's an afterthought for an MLS team, then that's a bad thing. Of course, MLS has its own issues right now. So when you've got legal action going on and a presidential election with people sort of breathing down your neck, maybe it's not the best time to be taking on more teams. And, we have to wonder if, let's say the NASL is wildly successful in bringing MLS to heel. All of a sudden, you're looking at a totally different ball game, and those women's teams affiliated with MLS teams look a little bit more precarious than the independent ones.
When you're looking at RSL and the move to Salt Lake, so the other side of that coin, how important is it for Salt Lake City and for the franchise, for Real Salt Lake, to now invest in the women's side of the game?
I have a feeling that this is going to do well. My impression from being in Utah a couple of times for Olympic sports, including the Olympics themselves in 2002, is that there's a fan base there that's happy to go out and watch women play sports, and I don't know if the WNBA experience out there would back me up on that, but I think this is going to be embraced. I think RSL is well integrated into the community. I think that this is the next step in that, and so I'm cautiously optimistic that this is going to be a well-supported, strong team. And RSL has always sort of punched above its own weight in terms of how well it's done in MLS. And so I think they can continue to do that in NWSL as well.
Now, Beau, it's the off season. It was a trialing 2017 season. After a first 3 seasons of the league that were almost without a hitch, or at least with the implication of the CSA, the feminine football in Mexico, and as well the United States women's national team. And now it's changing, it's evolving a bit. How would you describe year 4 of NWSL?
It seems that they're almost in a bit of a holding pattern. I mean, it was a good news, bad news offseason last time, of course. You had the championship team moved, and, of course, poor Western New York, I mean, they may be losing a second team in the Rochester Rhinos very shortly. And then they had the deal with A&E/Lifetime, which I think people are still a little bit on the fence about. I think that it's people are still getting used to the fact that NWSL soccer games are sandwiched on a cable channel between really bad exploitative movies. And
yeah, that's true. And you're being nice when you're saying it that way, to be fair.
Right. I mean, it's the sort of thing where if you're a parent, you want to be sure you click the TV off or click it somewhere else immediately after the game ends, because you may go straight from a post-game interview to a rape scene.
Yeah, well, let's just go there. I'm going to jump in before Duane, just for a quick follow-up here. Beau, is it detrimental to the league? It's a sport league. Never mind a woman or man or what sport. It's a sports league, all right? Yes, it's women's playing soccer, but it's a sports league, and it's on a non-sports programming. It's on a non-sports TV channel, and it is not catering to sports fans, at least new ones, when you don't necessarily advertise on sports channels for the Lifetime channel. Is it detrimental for the league, that partnership, in the long term?
Well, I don't know if we have data to show whether people are discovering the league for the first time, because that's certainly possible. That's the thing you'd certainly like to see happen. And so to have it on a women's network, a women's oriented network, could have some positives. It's just that I'm not sure Lifetime's programming is a good fit with it. If it were a show about women's issues, if you had a forum on feminism, if you had just a movie with a strong female lead, and that led into the NWSL Game of the Week, I think that would work. But no, it's just, my boyfriend was a psycho serial killer, or stuff like that. It's dreck. It's some of the worst programming on U.S. cable. So the idea of being on a women's network or a non-traditional sports network, it might even work on A&E itself. It's just the very specific programming of Lifetime, I think, that casts it in a weird light. Now, on the flip side, and of course the streaming app also wound up not really working. And I don't know what steps they're taking to address that, except that they did the right thing last year and basically made just about all the games free to everybody on their own site, and that worked well. So we'll have to see what comes of that. And of course, here's the funniest thing about the NWSL: they've gone 8 months without a commissioner. Right? Amanda Duffy essentially runs the league. I forget what her official title is. It's not commissioner. She's been running the league for 8 months and she doesn't have the title. I don't know. That's really difficult to understand.
This will be the 6th season the NWSL has run this year, this upcoming season. That would be 4 affiliate teams with MLS. Always an interesting sort of look at the difference between the different types of teams in there. But I'm wondering, from your perspective, watching this league closely and watching this league from the beginning, whether or not this is a league that could exist, that could commercially exist now without that support from the federations, or is this still very much something that requires that solid backbone of federation support?
It's hard to say what the federation is doing directly these days, because the intent was never that it would be propped up indefinitely. I mean, that's not a federation's job. I mean, the intent was to get started, and at the first NWSL draft, there were U.S. soccer personnel running the thing. By the next year, it was NWSL personnel, and they have grown their own staff. And so there is a bit of separation now from being run by the federation. Of course, you have the player salaries that are supplemented by the U.S. and the Canadian federations, and I wouldn't expect those to go away. I think those are important just for how well the league is going to do. I think the NWSL has reached the point that MLS has reached, which is that we're not immediately worried about the whole thing going belly up and disappearing. We're worried about how well it's going to thrive. Is the quality of play going to improve? And I thought the quality of play this season, and granted, the fact that I was seeing a team in Washington where the home team went from being one of the best teams in the league to one of the worst. But even the games that I saw, the opposing teams that I saw, I thought the quality of play this year was atrocious. It was entirely too physical, which a lot of the blame for that goes to the refs. Some of it goes to the coaches, and some of it may go to the players. It makes you wonder if the U.S. is developing skillful players. If you look at the college ranks, it seems like every game is 1-0. So I think there are some. We're past the survival stage, but really some serious questions about how the league is going to thrive.
Obviously, we all want women's professional club soccer to exist on its own terms. Everything's not always about national teams, but there is a direct sort of comparison here when you're talking about the NWSL because of the federation support about the national teams associated. We saw Canada and the U.S. play 2 games recently. I don't think those games were particularly well played. You can, argue that either way. But I'm wondering, from your perspective, whether you think the NWSL is actually making both of those national teams better at this point, the 2 federations involved in the league.
I don't know that it is. I think that it has deepened the playing pool a little bit, and you're seeing Taylor Smith and Abby Dahlkemper and Casey Short and these players work their way into the national team picture for the U.S., and that's what's supposed to happen. That's what happened with the WUSA with Shannon Botts and a player you might have heard of, Abby, somebody, kind of tall.
Abby, something back. I don't know.
Abby Bacharach.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's it.
Yeah, and people knew who Abby Wambach was before the WUSA, but she really came into her own in that league. And Shannon Botts went from being basically unknown to being a mainstay of the U.S. midfield for years after that. And so in that sense, it is working. The U.S. is probably better off with this league than they would be without it, especially when you look overseas. And the options are you can go to Lyon, make decent money, and win some of your league games by ridiculous margins. I mean, it's when Lyon's there's no parity over there. In the U.S. and Canada, we have this mindset that everything's supposed to be roughly equal. Even if you don't have a strict salary cap, Major League Baseball has revenue sharing, and all the teams are supposed to have a chance. In European soccer, of course, you don't have that. You have leagues where you have 2 teams competing for the championship, and everyone else is trying to win the occasional big game or stave off relegation. And so I don't know that going overseas is a good option. I think, the case in point for that is Crystal Dunn, who has spent an entire season overseas now with Chelsea, and there's some question as to whether she's regressed. And it's hard to put your finger on why. England, I think, has more competitive teams. Their top teams aren't as good as the top French or German teams, but perhaps top to bottom, they're a stronger league than the Frauen Bundesliga or the French league. But I don't know. She hasn't dazzled for the national team the way that she has the way she did the year before. So it's probably the best option at this point for a U.S. player is to play in this league. And there are ways we can address this. I think that one of the biggest things they have to get a handle on is officiating. You had officials this year who seemed to think that it was sexist to hand out a yellow card. And no, you need yellow cards to control the game. These are women who will foul. These are women who play very hard. And you need to take control of the game so that skilled players can play. And there were several coaches who complained about it up to the point of being fined last year. And we'll have to see if that changes next year.
Beau, the rise of women's soccer is continuing in Europe. There's a few leagues that you mentioned, a few teams that you mentioned, and some national teams and club are growing with investment and results over the last few years, and especially with the rise of young European star players. What does the NWSL need to do to attract those European star players and make sure that the NWSL North American stars don't feel the need to go in Europe to test themselves like the last 6 months or last 12 months and stay here?
Well, I mean, it's unrealistic to expect the NWSL to be like the WUSA was, because the WUSA spent far too much, and they were spending far too much in an era in which there wasn't a lot of professional competition for players. I mean, it was very rare that you had a European player you could really call professional. I remember hearing from Scott French, the wonderful veteran writer who's covered a lot of women's soccer in his day, who told me that Hanna Ljungberg, the great Swedish player, was one of the exceptions because she had sponsors, and basically individual sponsors, who made her professional. These days there are legitimate professional clubs, at least. Some of the leagues, top to bottom, maybe not really fully professional, but there's certainly a lot of places to play. And so it's going to be unrealistic to say we're going to get the top 5 German players, the top 5 French players, because they're going to play for Wolfsburg and Lyon and make good money and not go anywhere. So it's really going to be a question of perhaps finding talent from elsewhere. Of course, you look at Costa Rica with Rocky Rodriguez. We can. I think the NWSL can get players like that. They can get European players who just think it might be interesting to come over for a while, like Amandine Henry. But yeah, they're not going to get a hefty percentage of the stars. It's just a market that's changed. It's sort of like if you tried to put together the 1978 New York Cosmos today. You can't do it because the marketplace is so different.
Yeah, and Pele's a bit old, but that's another story.
Right.
I want to finish, Beau, the interview with a tough question. I'm gonna be nice about it, but we are living an awakening in the last month or so, especially as men in North America and the entire world. There's been an awakening. We've been made aware of things that we didn't see or choose not to see for too long.
Right.
Does women's sport, and especially the NWSL, deserve more money, deserve more attention? Do they deserve more?
As a response to the Harvey Weinstein and Al Franken and Roy Moore allegations, I don't know if I would cast it that way. I would I would suggest that yes, this is something worth investing in, and I don't know, when you market it as a cause, though, it tends to diminish the impact of it as a sport. I mean, I would encourage people to go to a game. If you go to, Washington Spirit is the club that I know the most. I've also been to games in Boston and New Jersey. I have not made the trek out to Portland, which is a totally different experience. But it's a wonderful experience, and it has to be sold on those merits to get fans to come in. If you just say, well, we're doing this as a cause and we don't really care if people show up, how long can you sustain that? And the thing is, I don't think it needs that in the long run. I think this is a worthwhile sport to watch. I have greatly enjoyed my experience taking my son to a Washington Spirit game, sitting on the grass hill, close to the action, and saying, you see that player? That's Crystal Dunn. I want you to watch how she plays. And he watches and is thrilled and is inspired. So I don't know if I would do it in reaction to I think paying our penance for the misdeeds of men over the last few decades is going to be a challenge that is going to hit through many aspects of society. I don't know that we do it by saying, "Oh well, I'm going to buy season tickets for a couple of years for Sky Blue as a means of assuaging my conscience." I don't think I'd want to see it go that way.
Beau Dure, thank you very much for your time today. You can follow Beau on Twitter at Dure Sport. We'll be right back after the break.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at Soccer Today SPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Duane Rollins with myself, Kevin Laramee. Caleb Porter out as manager of the Portland Timbers, Duane.
Yeah, that one broke last night.
Paul Tenorio, by the way, broke the news on 442 USA last night at 10:35.
Exactly, which is made it very, very fun for me to try and book a guest. We had Beau booked already. I enjoyed that interview with Beau, so I apologize for pushing the news of the day to the second block. But we deserve to give the NWSL its due there, and we'd already booked Beau, so there you go. Yeah, I'm surprised I'm not about this. I'm surprised in the sense that this is kind of, I think we're entering into a newer era of MLS. We talk about all the 1-0s, 2-0s, 3-0s, 16.0s, or 515.2s, or whatever era we're in with MLS right now. But
we're in the Pentium 4. It's Pentium 4. You remember the Pentium 4?
Sort of, yeah, kind of. Yeah, I do. Yeah, that sure.
Yeah, it's when computers started to be like not fast, but like just like faster.
What is it? The 430? What is it? 365 or something? I forget.
It was like 133. Anyways, yeah, it's a long time ago.
Long time ago, and now our phones have more power than what our personal computers used to have back then.
Our phone has more power than the Apollo mission that went to the moon.
Fair enough. Yeah, more power in my hands than anyway.
Yeah, be careful where you're going there.
What I'm seeing nowadays, though, is that there seems to be more pressure on coaches in Major League Soccer, and the owners seem to be more willing, outside of a few exceptions. Like we know where the places are that seem to have like leashes forever. DC United, that
New England
to be able.
New England.
Well, yeah. Anyway, but exactly. But in this particular case, Portland is a team that has a lot of aspirations, so I'm not surprised in the sense that they're firing him now. It's different. Major League Soccer seems to be quicker on the trigger to fire guys now than they were at any other point ever. And I think
let's be careful. Let's be careful. It's not a firing, and usually we agree that when they say parted ways, it's firing. This move was initiated by Caleb Porter himself. He approached Gavin Wilkinson and Mary Paulson for the mutual parting of ways, which means there's maybe a move that Portland has in mind. There's maybe somewhere that he wants to go that is, available right now. And I doubt that it's another MLS position. But look at what job is available in North American soccer right now. There's kind of a nice shiny seat that just got opened because a certain country didn't make the World Cup.
So you're suggesting that perhaps he might be aiming at the U.S. men's national team job.
Would make a lot of sense. And the timing of the decision by Caleb Porter, leaves he knows where he's going. This is not for any reason. Maybe he's going back to college, but I doubt it. There's the job security, but when you just got the gig of maybe one of the best club soccer team in North America with Portland Timbers, you kind of continue to move up. You don't move down. And the move to U.S. men's national team job would be a move up.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. He's a little young for a national team job, but it is something that obviously he's been...
If you're good enough, you're old enough, Duane, no? Does that apply for coaches?
It's not quite that so much as that usually managers prefer to be on the club side of things, and they end up in the national team. There's exceptions to this. Bob Bradley being a famous one right off the top of my head for the U.S. job that's gone to try and pursue club dreams after that. But it tends to be kind of like a final landing spot. I think, with Mourinho, we always assume he'll finish his days coaching Portland, right? Or Portland, pardon me. I don't think we assume that.
I doubt that. I doubt that Mourinho will go to Portland, but he might coach Portugal, though.
Yeah, that's Portugal, Portland. Start with a P. It's
just a few thousand miles difference. Well, what's a few thousand miles?
Exactly. You can understand how I made that slip this particular day. But anyway, yes, we always assume that he'll retire there. It's like a retirement gig. Porter, maybe they look at things a little different in the U.S., so maybe he is up for that. Look, I asked this honestly to American listeners out there. Just yell at the window. I'm sure I'll hear you, or you can respond to us on social media. Would you be happy with this? Because I get the sense, reading sort of the tea leaves of US MNT Twitter right now, and I understand that that's not necessarily going to be the be-all end-all in terms of general overall world support. But what I see on social media, I don't think that kind of appointment would go over that well. I think that a lot of US fans are really clamoring for something outside the box. And I don't think Porter is necessarily going to be outside the box in people's minds. Yeah. He seems to be closer to the establishment than what I think a lot of people would want. I don't know.
But
am I
you
wrong
know how
to think that?
I look at the situation, and who did Caleb Porter coach over the years? Who and when? Like at Akron with the Zips, he coached. Like I just saw a picture tweeted by Evan Bush today, goalkeeper of the Montreal Impact, that he used to be playing for. He's an alma mater. He's an alumni of Akron, and some of those teams, 75% of those teams are playing in Major League Soccer, and like 50% of those are playing for the U.S. men's national team. So that's where I look at the situation. You have a coach that has experience with coaching those players and put those players in a successful position. Now he might have the chance to do so with the national team, because he does have a lot of experience with the Nagbis of the world, with the Clashton, and there's many more that are part of the U.S. men's national team that have experience with Caleb Porter, or at least they respect Caleb Porter. So maybe that's part of the thinking, and maybe you're tired of the Klinsman and you're not Arena, like it's the old generation. How about you skip one and you go with a young one already to match the players? Because when you're looking at the players for the next cycle and the one after, they're the one that Porter has experience with. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Caleb Porter take the job and the U.S. men's national team to give him the job for those reasons, because of his experience with the present talent pool.
I wouldn't be shocked either. Obviously, he has a relationship with them. I think what some people would say is that his only other experience as a national team coach ended in failure. He failed to get the Olympic team to the Olympics, which at the time was thought to be a generation that had a lot of talent, and American fans weren't talking about making the Olympics that cycle. They were talking about winning the Olympics.
That's London 2012, by the way. That was the London 2012 Olympics.
Yeah, they lost to Canada, so we saw that team up and close. So that would be, I think, the reaction there. Look, yeah, obviously there is sort of a relationship, as I said. There's a lot of sense to this. I mean, where else would he be stepping aside to? You could look the other side. The only other explanation really is that he's looked at this and decided that, 5 years is kind of the point where things start to get stale, and maybe he was jumping before he got pushed and things like that. There is a lot of inspiration or aspirations, as I said, at Portland. Let's turn our attention that way, Kevin. I mean, looking back at his time in Portland, he won an MLS Cup championship, and that is hard to ignore.
To first place in the Western Conference regular season in 2013-2017.
Yeah, and there was, of course, a couple terrible seasons in there as well where they missed the playoffs. So it's an up and down sort of situation, and I think a lot of people look at Portland and think, despite that one title, which sort of came on a run that wasn't that expected, despite that, I don't think people think that Portland met its expectations, and that's sort of, I've never been able to get a handle on Porter, whether I think he does a good job or not, because the consistency of the Timbers has never been as steady as I'd like for a team that had the talent that they do.
Pragmatically, he was stubborn for a while. Like if you're looking at his 2015 run, it was not going well before. Before he adapted his tactics mid-season to the roster he was stubborn for a few years. And that changed when he adapted himself to the rest of the team, and that season is now in history, and they went on a run, and they won the Cup in 2015. And we remember it. But now the question, Duane, is who takes his place in Portland? And, of course, in the article written by Paul Tenorio on 442 USA last night, two names are mentioned that are coming up a lot in the last week, and especially the last three shows of Soccer Today. Marc Dos Santos. The thing is, did Marc Dos Santos get screwed by timing once again? If you go back with the Ottawa days and Swoop Park Rangers and Deltas, he had other choices, other offers, took one, and the other ones opened up last minute, and he wasn't available because he already signed other options. In this case, the Timbers Portland job opens up. Apparently, like Marc Dos Santos has been saying the last few weeks, he already has chosen and committed for 2018 for a club. And I doubt that it's Portland, or maybe it was. I don't know. But the thing is, it's a name that came out, and Gio Savarese of the New York Cosmos as well. Two names that came out, probably the two hottest free agent coach right now, free agent. We know for Dos Santos, we kind of figure for the Cosmos, depending on what's going on with the USSF and ASL lawsuit. But what do you think is going to happen in Portland? Do you see a possibility of a Marc Dos Santos giving phone calls late last night saying, guys, I'm available. I would love to coach MLS in your city. I will make great results with a Valeri, Nagby, and company. Please give it to me. Or who else is a candidate, do you think, for the Portland job?
That's a great question. I don't think, to answer the first part, I don't think Dos Santos is going to renege on a current opportunity that he's allegedly accepted. And all signs sort of suggest that, and in fact, we've had some suggestion that we're going to find out today where he's going to end up. So, and I just can't see him backing out on something he's already this doesn't seem like his gig, and it's a small fraternity anyway. So if you were to back out in a coaching position, I think that would be some pretty bad karma, and I can't see Dos Santos doing that. His opportunity, I think, is going to have to come with him either leaving North America altogether, or perhaps him entering into the league through a team. So we'll see what happens there. I think that probably what's going to happen with Portland, just based on sort of the aspiration, for the third time I'll use that word, that they have, I think that they're going to follow the recent trend that we've seen, Montreal just recently with the hire, and kind of look at maybe someone that's outside of the North American view. I think even when they hired Porter back in the day, that was a little bit, he was a hot ticket, right? Like that was,
he was
the big.
Here's a question. How long before Big Sam Allardyce signs for Portland? Because you're talking about big managers. It's important in the States, so he has to speak English. He can't go to coach Portland and be like just one language in French or Spanish, right? He needs to be English. So look at England. Who's available right now? Big Sam on the sideline at Portland Stadium. That would be awesome.
I don't know whether he wants another. That would be awesome and fun and entertaining and all those things. Another name, and I don't know. It's kind of soon, and I don't know whether he wants another job. But I think if he does want another job, it would be on the West Coast, which this would match. And that is, of course, Bruce Arena.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting hire there. And he is available. And he's had a lot of – say what you want about his failure with the U.S. national team in this past cycle, and sort of his philosophies in general and his personality in general. But he has had a lot of success in MLS. I don't know whether that's replicable, but – that's another name that might be out there that Portland, I think, with the sort of the way that they think, I could see them making a move at Arena as well. And I don't know what the reaction to that would be, because
it would be terrible. It would be terrible. Like, I think the world of soccer, especially Major League Soccer, moves really quickly. And I think Bruce Arena lost a lot of goodwill over the last year in Major League Soccer. And I think it wouldn't be accepted by Portland fans to have Bruce Arena, no offense, but when you have a long-term vision, Bruce Arena cannot be your long-term vision head coach at this point of his career, at this point of your club, right, in 2017. You have to look in the future. And for me, it would not go well if Bruce Arena becomes your coach, because you basically become a stopgap measure type of club where you're just there for a few years holding pattern till you get the next project. Because Bruce Arena comes over, it's not a project. It's just reassurance.
Yeah, he is, of course, older as well. So this would certainly not be a situation where he'd be sticking around for more than a couple of years. You'd be bringing him in with the idea that he's going to take the, what is a decent roster there and mold them into champions for next season. So that will be interesting to watch there. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in the conversations because I don't know how much of that would have been Porter jumping completely, or whether there was some inkling of, maybe there was some frank conversations behind the scenes. Maybe there was a,
Well, apparently there was I don't want to say power struggle. It's a term that I've read since last night. But there was probably some divergence of opinion of a project, divergence of opinion on direction this club need to take.
Yeah, and that's always the case that you're going to have, and you're seeing that more and more with the structures within Major League Soccer, where they're moving more and more towards a traditional North American management setup, where you have your, GM manager kind of situation, as opposed to the more traditional soccer stuff where you just have the on-field manager being the person that's mostly responsible for player acquisitions, or you're having that division of powers there, and then that in turn can lead to some, tug of wars, which aren't necessarily always going to work out in favor of anyone. Usually when you get a power structure struggle within a club, all three parties lose: the club, the fans, and both of the people involved in the power struggle. So if that was happening, then maybe this is for the best. It certainly, what surprises me kind of a bit about this is the timing of it. So quickly after what was relatively a decent season. They won the West, as you said. Yes, they lost in the playoffs, and that is unfortunate. But you look at the amount of injuries that they had in that series against Houston, and it's hard to really blame a manager for that loss. And the playoffs are so arbitrary too, and I kind of hate that about. I don't, I understand that Major League Soccer is always going to have playoffs. I'm not one of those people that's going to rant and rave that, the true champion is the Shield and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, I think that you should look at the overall regular season results more of how you're judging a soccer coach than necessarily, 1-2 game series when half your team is injured and you end up losing on 2 goals at home against a team that was healthier than you. That's not necessarily how I would view this, but I guess maybe this is North American. They do, that's absurd to me, but here we are.
Here we are to finish the show, Duane. As always, yes, there is some MLS game, but it starts Tuesday, so we have plenty of time Monday and Tuesday to preview the Western and Eastern Conference Finals. By the way, for our fellow journalists out there, for our fellow media people, credentials for MLS Cup has opened up today, so you know who to send an email to. But going to the Premier League tomorrow, it's back, and it starts at 7:30 tomorrow morning with a North London derby.
That certainly is a way to get back out of an international break. A fascinating I can never remember one where Arsenal has so clearly been the underdog.
It's crazy, eh? How many goals will Kane score? Tottenham looks like a powerhouse compared to Arsenal at this point.
Yeah, I've actually watched a lot of Arsenal this year. I've a friend that she's an Arsenal fan, and I watch games with her sometimes. And usually she's in a bad mood at the end of those games. So they're a difficult team to get a handle on it. But I can say this is that I was talking to her after the City game. They played City going into the break, and and that was a tense little breakfast meeting. By the way, I'll let you know that. But at any rate, at the end of the game, we were talking, and she was deeply regretting this dreading this Spurs game, because there's nothing that indicates, other than, they're Spursy, ha ha ha, look at the history. There's literally no indication or suggestion out there that Arsenal has what it takes to pull this off. It truly is a team that I don't know. They're not a sum of their parts, right? Arsenal right now, they still look fairly talented, but there's just something missing there. And
look
Spurs,
like a team who quit on their manager, to be quite fair.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it looks like. And it looks like a manager who stayed too long. And guess what? We're pretty sure that that's exactly what it is.
And that's, as we don't talk about them right now in the Wenger stuff at all this year because we talked it to death last year, right? But
Exactly.
so there's nothing more to say other than it's sad. It's just kind of, even if you're not an Arsenal fan, unless you're a Spurs fan, really, it's just kind of sad to watch this play out right now. It's like,
Arsene Wenger is that old man that's 89, 82 years old that's still driving and still think he's doing a good job, but everyone's yelling at him, get off the lane, and what he's hearing is, hey, no, they're telling you to get off the road.
Well, I was about to say it's like Fat Elvis, right? Like,
Fat Elvis, yeah. Like,
yeah, it's not something you want to see. Like, you want to remember the good stuff. You want to remember leather jacket Elvis, not Fat Elvis. Fat leisure shoot Elvis dying on his toilet. That's what we're looking at right now. We're looking at Fat Wenger, and it's unfortunate. But no, it's going to be an interesting game, and I'm going to make my schedule's all screwed up, but I'm going to try and figure out a way that I can watch that one tomorrow for sure.
Hashtag Fat Wenger.
There you go. We'll try and get that going. We'll see how much influence we have.
I'll do like 2 tweets.
Yeah, I'm not gonna count my chickens there. Looking at the rest of the schedule for the weekend too, you've got Leicester City, Man City, Leicester City, the City Derby, I guess if you want to call that. One of them. There's a few of them out there.
Yeah.
That is interesting to me, just based on how it's going to be a great measure in terms of how much Pep has moved this team in his own direction this year. Well, we certainly think he has, but you look at how easily Leicester and how much trouble City had against Leicester last year, and stylistically, tactically, they matched up so well, and they've already had a field day against them in their last meeting last year, a hat trick, and that was probably the game where I finally gave up, stopped counting, looking at the standings for the rest of the year. So that's a fascinating one there. There's not a lot of great games. Newcastle United's kind of interesting, the 12:30 game, just because Newcastle's playing a bit above out of their zone, I think.
Oh yeah, pretty much. And United, yeah, they have new players back in training, but I doubt the Zlatan and Rowe maybe will be available. We'll see if they are playing tomorrow. One game that is interesting to me, it's a Sunday game. It's Watford West Ham. And why, you say? Why, Kevin? Why? God, why are you interested in that game? Well, it's because it's David Moyes' first competitive debut with West Ham, where he had the team for a little while now. It's a week. And they're playing Watford, which technically is a team that West Ham should beat. With the squad, with West Ham, with Nolan and company, with Chicharito and others, they should find a way to beat Deeney and Watford pretty easily. We'll see if it happens. But Watford at home, playing a bit above their weight this season as well. West Ham is not going to be easy, and they need to turn things around quickly if they don't want to go down. And when David Moyes is in charge of your club, I would be worried.
Yeah, and of course the weekends with the continued dogs of Monday Night Football this year. There haven't really been some great games. Brighton, Stoke City.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll watch that because I'm a completist, but that's not exactly what they think they had in mind when they isolated a single game there. But it's good for you'd imagine being a Brighton fan though. You've gone in just a couple years from never having any hope of being at the top flight to suddenly you're going to be playing a game where you're the only game in town. The whole
little trip down south. There's nothing wrong with a little trip down south. Let's go to South Coast. Let's go to the beach. Let's go see some sand, some birds, some seagulls, and why not? Let's go see Brighton.
All right, another good game actually. The Liverpool-Southampton game. It'll be interesting as well to see what exactly Liverpool is week in, week out. It's always, flip that coin and see whether Jekyll or Mr. Hyde shows up, and away we go. But I'm glad to have it back, though. God, I hate international breaks, and I'm glad to have it back.
There's nothing like club. We love our country, but because our country is terrible and you're not going to the World Cup, and I can say ours now, because even our American listeners, guess what? You're not going to the World Cup. So, thanks for club country. Thanks for club football.
Country. Yeah, club over country.
Any day.
All day long.
Any day. All day. Speaking of all day, soccer. All day. That's what we love. That's what we do. That's what we breathe. And that's what we eat. And until Monday, we'll be back. We'll talk about the weekend in Premier League. We'll probably talk about the rest of the news, because there's going to be something happening again this weekend. Someone's going to get fired. Someone's going to do something controversial. Someone's going to do something. And Monday, Duane and I will talk about it. You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. And as always, until Monday, have a great soccer.
Podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.